My name is Avery Collins. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. After Mom moved in with my brother Blake, he cleared out her house and told me, "There's no room for your old boxes anymore." Then, at dinner, he laughed and said, "You were never really around anyway." Nobody corrected him. Not Mom, not Aunt Elaine, not even Dad. I quietly went home. Then 2 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Grandma Ruth's old hairdresser, Sharon Wells. And the first thing she said was, "Avery, your grandmother talked about you every Friday for years." I froze, because according to my family, Grandma barely remembered me. Then Sharon softly said, "Honey, I think your grandmother knew someone was trying to erase you." And suddenly, I realized I hadn't been forgotten. I'd been erased. Everything changed when Mom moved in with my brother Blake. He said it would be easier, closer to doctors, closer to family. Mom agreed. Dad had passed away 2 years earlier, and maintaining the house alone had become difficult. I thought we were doing what was best for her. I didn't realize Blake had other plans. A week after Mom moved, I drove over to grab some photo albums. My key didn't work. I thought I'd grabbed the wrong one. Then Blake opened the door. "Oh yeah, I changed the locks." I stared at him. "Without telling me?" He shrugged. "Mom lives with me now." As if 30 years of memories belonged to him. I asked about the boxes in the attic, Grandma Ruth's recipe cards, old pictures, my high school yearbooks. Blake laughed. "There's no room for your old junk anymore." Junk. That's what he called it. The pieces of my life. Mom looked uncomfortable, but she said nothing, and that silence hurt. At Aunt Elaine's Sunday dinner, Blake made another joke. Avery was never really close to the family anyway. Everyone laughed awkwardly. My cousins nodded. Apparently, they'd heard the story before. Then Aunt Elaine asked, "Why did you stop visiting Grandma?" I nearly dropped my fork. Stop visiting? I called Grandma every Sunday, until the week she died. But nobody knew that. I looked at Mom. She knew. She knew about the Sunday calls. She knew about the cards, the birthdays, the doctor's appointments. But she lowered her eyes and changed the subject. Because keeping peace with Blake mattered more than defending me. That was the moment something broke inside me. A few days later, Blake finally let me inside. I walked upstairs and froze. My old room was empty, completely empty. No trophies, no graduation picture, no childhood books, not even Grandma Ruth's framed photo. "Where's everything?" I whispered. Blake shrugged. "Nobody wanted that stuff." Nobody. Apparently, I counted as nobody. Then I noticed something strange. The hallway photos had changed. Pictures of Blake's kids. Pictures of Mom. Pictures of family vacations. But almost every picture with me and Grandma Ruth was gone. I stopped walking. Because suddenly, this didn't feel random. It felt intentional. That night I called Mom. "Why are my pictures gone?" She sighed. "Don't upset your brother." "Mom, where are they?" He said it was time to simplify. Simplify. Interesting word. Because somehow, simplifying always meant removing me. 2 weeks later, an unknown number called. I almost ignored it. "Hello? Avery?" "Yes." "This is Sharon Wells." I frowned. "I'm sorry?" "Your grandmother Ruth's hairdresser." I sat up. Because Grandma had gone to the same salon for years. Then Sharon laughed softly. "Honey, she talked about you every Friday." I froze. Every Friday? According to my family? Grandma barely remembered me. Sharon grew quiet. "Sweetheart, your grandmother always brought a little notebook." My heart started racing. "Notebook?" "Yes." "And after she passed away, she accidentally left it at the salon." I swallowed hard. "What's inside?" Silence. Then Sharon whispered, Avery, your name is on almost every page. I realized Grandma Ruth remembered far more than anyone wanted me to believe. I drove to Sharon Wells' salon the next morning. She hugged me before I even sat down. Your grandmother adored you, Avery. Then she smiled. Every Friday for 11 years. 11 years. Not once. Not occasionally. Every Friday. And suddenly I realized Grandma's routine had lasted longer than some marriages. Sharon reached into a drawer. Inside was a small floral notebook, worn corners, bent pages, Grandma Ruth's handwriting. My hand started shaking. She forgot it here 3 days before she passed. I opened the first page, and there it was. Avery called after church. My eyes filled with tears, because someone had written me into their life. Every week. Page after page. Avery sent soup. Avery fixed my glasses. Avery called Sunday evening. Avery brought peach pie. Again, and again, and again. My name appeared everywhere. Not Blake's. Mine. The lie I'd been hearing for 2 years started cracking. Sharon opened another envelope. She carried this. Inside was an old photo. Me and Grandma Ruth, at 12 years old, holding fishing poles. The edges were worn. She had carried it in her purse. For years. I started crying. Because according to Blake, I barely visited. Apparently, Grandma disagreed. Then Sharon laughed softly. Your grandmother saved newspaper articles. What articles? Anything with your name. My college graduation, my charity run, even an article about my company. Grandma had clipped every one and kept them in plastic sleeves, like treasures. I had no idea. Sharon looked at me carefully. You know, she always talked about your Sunday calls. I froze. Every Sunday? She smiled. Without fail? Then she lowered her voice. Sometimes she cried afterward. Cried? Because Blake told her you were too busy to visit. I stopped breathing. Too busy? I called every week. Something inside me turned cold. I drove home and opened old phone records. Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Years of calls. 22 minutes. 30 minutes. 40 minutes. Every week. No missed months. No missing years. And there it was. Proof. Not memories. Facts. I called Mom. Did Blake tell Grandma I stopped caring? Silence. Then, he handled most of the calls. My stomach dropped. What calls? The updates. Messages. He said he didn't want to bother you. I closed my eyes. Mom sounded ashamed. And suddenly, I realized she knew more than she admitted. Before I left, Sharon stopped me. Honey, there's one more thing. She handed me Grandma Ruth's old salon tote bag. I recognized it instantly. Inside were receipts, coupons, reading glasses, and an old flip phone. I smiled sadly. Then something caught my eye. A folded note, written in Grandma's handwriting. It said, People who showed up. My heart stopped. My fingers shook as I opened the paper. Number 1, Avery. Not Blake. Not Mom. Not Aunt Elaine. Me. Underneath my name were dates, Sunday lunches, doctor visits, birthday cards, church picnics, and at the bottom, Grandma had written one sentence. Don't let anyone tell her she wasn't loved. I knew Grandma Ruth had seen this coming. I charged Grandma Ruth's old flip phone that night. Honestly, I didn't expect it to work. But after 20 minutes, the screen lit up. And suddenly, I felt like I was holding a piece of her. Then I saw something strange. Saved voice recordings. 23 of them. My heart started racing because Grandma hated technology. Someone had taught her how to record. She had used it. I pressed the first recording and froze. Hi, sweetheart. It's Friday. Sharon says recording things helps memory. Then she laughed. Anyway, Avery called Sunday. We talked about peach pie. I started crying, because according to my family, Grandma barely remembered me. Yet here she was, remembering details, my details. Another recording. Blake came by today. Silence. Then Grandma sighed. He needed signatures again. Again? My stomach tightened. Then she added, "He says Avery is busy." I sat up. Busy? I called every Sunday. Why would he say that? I didn't want to hear the next recording. But I had to. The following morning, I called Aunt Elaine. "Where's Grandma's pearl necklace?" Silence. "I think Blake gave it to his daughter." "What?" "And some antiques disappeared." I froze. Apparently Grandma's sewing box, her silver spoons, and even Dad's pocket watch were gone. The same brother who called memories junk had kept the valuable pieces. I drove to see Mom. She looked exhausted. "Why didn't you stop him?" Mom started crying. "I wanted peace." Peace. That word again. I was tired, Avery. "He handled the messages. He said you were busy." My eyes filled with tears, because Mom knew. Not everything, but enough. And she chose quiet. I listened to more recordings. Every week. Every Sunday. Grandma talked about me. My Avery called. Avery brought soup. Avery fixed my TV. Avery remembered church. Then one recording broke me. "Don't let anyone make her feel forgotten." I couldn't stop crying, because Grandma knew. She knew somebody was rewriting our story. That evening, my cousin Rachel called. "Avery, I feel awful." "Why?" "Blake told everyone you stopped visiting." I closed my eyes. "He said Grandma cried because you abandoned her." I nearly dropped my phone. Then Rachel whispered, "We believed him." I realized how powerful a lie becomes when repeated long enough. Rachel forwarded screenshots, family messages. "Blake. She won't notice." "Mom. Just don't start drama." "Aunt Elaine. She was never sentimental anyway." I stared at the screen. Never sentimental? I still had Grandma's birthday cards from 20 years ago. My family chose the easier story. Late that night, I played recording number 19. Grandma sounded tired. Blake visited. Long pause. He needed papers. Then her voice broke. "I wish Avery lived closer." Another pause. "He says she's too busy." Then she whispered, "But I know my girl." I stopped feeling angry. I felt heartbroken, because Grandma had spent years defending me, even when I wasn't in the room. 2 weeks later, Mom invited everyone for her birthday. Blake was already joking when I arrived. "Look who remembered we exist." Everyone laughed. Then he smiled and said, "Some people disappear until they want attention." I smiled back. And inside my purse, Grandma Ruth's flip phone waited quietly. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't coming to defend myself. I was coming with Grandma. Mom's birthday dinner looked normal. Cake, candles, family photos, and Blake, sitting at the center like always. Then he laughed. "Some people disappear until they want attention." Aunt Elaine smiled awkwardly. Cousin Rachel looked uncomfortable. Mom stared at her plate. And I realized something. Blake really believed his own story. That changed everything. I reached into my purse, pulled out Grandma Ruth's flip phone. Blake laughed. "What is that?" I smiled. "Grandma." Then I pressed play. Her voice filled the room. "It's Sunday." Avery called again. Everyone froze. Blake stopped smiling. Mom slowly looked up. Nobody was touching their cake. I played another one. "Blake says Avery's too busy." Long pause. "But I know my girl." My mother's eyes filled with tears. Dad looked down. Aunt Elaine stopped breathing. Then Grandma laughed softly. "Avery never misses Sunday." Blake wasn't laughing anymore. He forced a smile. "Old people forget things." I nodded. Then I played another recording. Avery brought soup. Avery fixed my glasses. Avery stayed after church. Dates, stories, details, things dementia couldn't invent. Blake's smile disappeared. Because facts don't argue, they just exist. Mom covered her mouth. Oh God. She looked at me. Avery. I stayed quiet. Because apologies weren't enough. Not tonight. Then Mom whispered. She remembered everything. No. Grandma remembered love. And love remembers. Then the front door opened. Everyone turned. And there stood Sharon Wells, Grandma's hairdresser. Blake frowned. What is she doing here? Sharon smiled. The ladies from the salon asked me to bring this. She placed a USB drive on the table. I remembered the envelope she'd mentioned. Rachel plugged the USB into the TV. Pictures appeared. Grandma laughing, birthday cakes, church picnics, recipes, holiday cards. Then one picture stopped everyone. Me fixing Grandma's glasses. Blake stared. Mom cried harder, because nobody remembered that day. Except Grandma. The slideshow continued. Sunday lunches, Grandma holding my Christmas card, church friends, salon birthdays. Then the final slide appeared. Black screen, white letters. Thank you, Avery, for never missing Sunday. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even Blake looked pale. Grandma herself had answered him. Cousin Rachel stood up. I believed you. She looked at Blake. You told us Avery abandoned Grandma. Aunt Elaine started crying. Mom whispered, I let it happen. Then Rachel said quietly, we all did. Nobody was blaming me anymore. They were blaming themselves. I opened my laptop. Grandma's recipes, photos, voice notes, church newsletters, Sunday journals, everything digitized. Blake inherited the house, but I had preserved Grandma. And looking around the room, I realized something. He got the walls, but I had kept the Sundays. Everyone understood the difference. 6 months passed, and something strange started happening. Old friends from church mailed me photographs. Neighbors sent recipes. Former co-workers of Grandma Ruth shared stories. Even people I hadn't seen in years wrote letters. Apparently, Grandma talked about me more than I ever knew. I realized Blake had erased me from the house, but he couldn't erase me from people's memories. Mom visited me one afternoon. No speeches, no excuses. She simply sat quietly. Then she whispered, I thought keeping peace was protecting everyone. I smiled sadly. No, Mom. Keeping peace protected Blake. She started crying, because after 2 years, she finally understood. Silence had chosen a side. It wasn't mine. Aunt Elaine showed up a week later, holding a cardboard box. I found these in my attic. Inside were Grandma's recipes, Christmas cards, birthday photos, and dozens of handwritten notes. One envelope said, for Avery's future children someday. I burst into tears, because Grandma had imagined a future she would never see. And somehow, she had prepared for it anyway. Sharon called one Friday. Honey, I forgot something. What? She laughed softly. Your grandmother used to tell everyone in the salon. If Avery doesn't call on Sunday, she's probably helping somebody else. I smiled. Then Sharon added, she never doubted you. Not once. And hearing that healed something inside me, because for years, I had doubted myself. One evening, Blake called. Not angry, not sarcastic, quiet. I need Grandma's pictures. I stayed silent. Then he said, my daughter asked about her. Apparently, his little girl wanted stories, wanted recipes, wanted memories. Because memories were junk once, now they mattered. If someone you loved left behind memories no one could erase, comment, love outlives lies. I sent him the recipes, the church photos, birthday pictures, Christmas cards. Even Grandpa's old fishing photos. Everything. Except one thing. The final slide. The thank you message. That belonged to me. Not because I was angry, because some gifts aren't meant to be shared. They're meant to be treasured. 2 weeks later, Blake came over. No jokes. No excuses. He looked older somehow. Then he quietly said, "I thought you didn't care." I stared at him. "No. You wanted everyone to think I didn't care." He lowered his eyes. "Because we both knew the truth. And finally." He stopped arguing. Mom called me crying. "What happened?" "I found it." "What? Your graduation picture?" Apparently, Blake had shoved it into a storage bin, behind old blankets. Mom framed it. Then she hung it back in the hallway. For the first time in years, I was back on the wall. But strangely, I no longer needed to be, because Grandma had already kept me where it mattered. On Sunday mornings, I still make Grandma's peach cobbler. Still drink coffee after church. Still sit on the porch. And sometimes, I play her voice recordings. Not because I'm sad, because hearing her laugh feels like home. And every Sunday I smile, because I know she never believed the lies. Not once. Funny thing about houses: people inherit walls, furniture, jewelry, keys. But love doesn't live in walls. Love lives in moments, phone calls, recipes, church picnics, Friday salon visits, Sunday afternoons. Blake inherited Mom's house, but Grandma Ruth inherited something bigger. She left pieces of herself inside everyone who truly loved her. And somehow, she made sure I knew that. My name is Avery Collins. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. And my brother said there was no room for me in Mom's house. But Grandma had already made room for me in every heart that remembered what he tried to erase. He inherited the walls. I inherited the Sundays.